This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is big business. This is the American way.
Who were the Chamber brothers, crack dealers from Detroit, portrayed in the movie New Jack City, played by Wesley Snipes? Larry, Billy Joe, Willie Lee and Otis Chambers were 4 out of 14 children, born in Lee County, Arkansas. In the mid-1980s, they grew up in poverty and they were subjected to effective racism, often around in parts of rural South at this time. Their options were for upward economic or social mobility. It was these conditions that caused Billy Joe Chambers to leave county and travel up to the Delta to Detroit in search for job opportunities, a future away from farm life. Billy Joe got pulled into the marijuana business shortly after arriving in Detroit and had incredible success doing it, to the point that he was originally reticent to enter the crack cocaine market. However, a family friend introduced him to exponential returns one could make on crack sales, given the high addictive and destructive nature of the drug, and from there he took his business into the selling crack. It was not long before his brothers struggled into Detroit, some way of recent jail sentences, others simply by traveling from Lee County in need of work, like their brother. They were soon incorporated into the business, and the Chamber Brothers drug trafficking network took off. Their reputation for violence and ruthlessness was widely known and feared. Allowed police to justify extreme violence as collateral damage for the purpose of the greater good and skate by with little questioning. As discussed below, the growing sense of community involvement in getting crack off the streets in Detroit meant that the police were often called and encouraged by community members to take down the drug kingpins out by any means necessary. The Chamber Brothers' models for crack sales resembled a large corporate structure with regulations for runners as well as consumer-based benefits such as discount coupons and 2-for-1 deals on rocks. The Chambers Brothers became one of the largest drug gangs in the city of Detroit, and their use of young drug runners in designated apartments and houses were especially notable in order to understand the emergence of high-volume policing in the mid to late 1980s. Understanding the infrastructure of organizing gangs and conversation of youth to low-level drug dealers is vital. With the recent disbanding and incarceration of the prolific drug cartel Young Boys Incorporated, there was less space in the business upon which brothers could capitalize. They quickly took over the various parts of low-income Detroit neighborhoods by buying up property in which their numbers would make deals, and with the substantially exposing young, primarily black youth to the crack business's extreme cash payoff. The case became so high profile that Bill Clinton took time in his nomination speech for President of the United States to address the takedown of the brothers and their associates. Crack was an emerging problem on the streets of Detroit, and with one which police were trying to catch up, immediately preceding the rise of the Chamber Brothers empire. As the Chamber Brothers gained more and more power and money, the no crack crew took increasingly violent and discriminate actions to try and hunt down the source of the Chamber's network drug money. They would pick up civilians that happened to live in areas tagged as the Chamber Brothers territory and take them to integrative ride-alongs, forcing them to identify the houses that the Chambers were supposedly using for the businesses. As the 1980s progressed, the Detroit legislators and police officers were at last getting crack off the Detroit streets. One initiative introduced by the DPD was the No Crack Helpline, wherein Detroit residents could call into 1-800-NO CRACK to inform police about possible crack houses or users in their area. Operators would ask if they could help, and then follow up the questions such as, does someone live in the upstairs? Are there people going in and out all day? How are buys made? Are there cars frequently parked outside? Ultimately, it was a mixture of community involvement and militarized police practices that created the necessary conditions to arrest the Chamber Brothers and dismantle the Chamber Brothers drug network. 4 brothers convicted of leading a crack ring that supplied up the half-city users from 1982 to 1988. Larry Chambers was sentenced to life in prison. Billy Joe Chambers was sentenced to 45 years. Otis Chambers was sentenced to 27 years. And Willie Chambers was sentenced to 21 years.